your phone, your clothes, the fuel in your car, the food on your plate, every single thing that you use today travel through a narrow strip of water somewhere on this planet. A strip so small, so vulnerable that one wrong decision by one regional power can make your grocery bill spike overnight. And here's the part that nobody talks about. The same vulnerability that controls your economy also controls the moral decisions of every major nation on earth. This is not just a shipping story. This is the story of how geography became the most powerful political weapon of the 21st century. Let us start with one number, 90%. 90% of everything traded in this world travels by sea, not by air, not by road, not by rail, but by sea. Ships carry trillions of dollars worth of cargo every single year. Oil, food, cars, clothes, medicines, electronics, everything. And here's the uncomfortable truth. All of that cargo, all of that global trade passes through just a handful of narrow waterways. And we call them choke points, maritime choke points. And according to a 2025 study published in Nature Communications, $192 billion worth of trade is exposed to disruption at these choke points every single year. Every year, $192 billion. One ship, one conflict, one blocked strait. And that number becomes real very fast. We saw it in 2021 when Ever Given ran aground in the Suez Canal just for 5 days. 5 days and the global economy felt the shock. Now imagine not for 5 days but 5 months or 5 years. That is the reality we are living in right now in 2026. That is why nations that publicly champion human rights quietly make deals with regimes they would never publicly endorse. Because trade security has become the primary driver of modern international law. Not justice, not ethics, not human rights, but trade security. Let me show you what exactly I mean. Two choke points, two geographic levers that controls the foreign policy of every major nation on earth. Number one, the Strait of Hormuz. Just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 21 miles. And yet, through that 21-mile gap, nearly 20 million barrels of oil pass every single day. 1/5 of all global LNG trade. And here is the critical part. Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait are wholly dependent on this trade. There is no alternative, no pipeline, no other way out for these countries. The Strait of Hormuz has been rated as a single highly critical choke point, meaning if it closes, the world cannot reroute. It simply stops. During the 12-day war in June 2025, insurance surcharges for the ships passing through Strait of Hormuz rose by more than 60% in days, not months, in days. And what happened to the nations that criticized Iran's human rights record? They went quiet. Because when your economy depends upon oil flowing through a 21-mile gap, ethics become a luxury you cannot afford. Number two, the Strait of Malacca. $5.3 trillion worth of goods move through it annually. It connects Asian manufacturing hubs to the global markets. And for China, this strait is an existential concern. Chinese strategic planners have long recognized that their entire economic model can be strangled at this single point. This is why China is building naval bases across the South China Sea, not for aggression, but for control. Control of the water, control of the trade, control of the politics. So geography is the new nuclear weapon, as we can see. Now get to the part that makes people uncomfortable. Democratic nations that build their entire identity on human rights make deals every single day with regimes they publicly condemn. And maritime trade routes are exactly why. Look at 2026. The Red Sea crisis that began in 2023 with Houthi attacks forced shipping companies to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope from south of South Africa, adding 10 to 14 extra days to every single voyage. Every voyage. According to UNC TAD, The average maritime haul distance grew from 4,830 miles in 2018 to 5,245 miles in 2024. Distance is no longer geography, it is geoeconomics. That extra distance means extra fuel, extra cost, extra time, extra carbon emissions. 41 million additional tons of CO2 per year just from Red Sea rerouting. And who pays for all this? You do. Every time you buy something online, every time you fill your car, every time you pay a grocery bill, you are paying the price of global political compromise. And here is the part that headlines miss. While the Western nations publicly condemn the Houthi attacks, they simultaneously maintained quiet channels with the regional powers who fund those very same groups. Because cutting off those relationships, meaning cutting off the trade routes they protect. Public rhetoric says one thing, diplomatic reality says another. And the ship sailing between them, that is yours. We are now entering a new era where the geography itself has become the ultimate weapon. Not missiles, not nuclear warheads, water, narrow strips of water. Iran understands this. China understands this. And the Houthis, they understand this. A non-state actor with drones and speedboats has disrupted more global trade in the last 2 years than most conventional military conflicts of the last decade. Think about that. According to Rice University's Baker Institute, Iran's attack on commercial shipping in 2026 have largely been carried out by unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, launched from network of bases along the Iranian coastline. The shallow passage of Hormuz is thought to be vulnerable to blockade by scuttled ships, meaning one deliberately sunk vessel could potentially close the world's most critical energy artery. This is not a science fiction. This is the reality that shipmasters like me have been navigating every single voyage. And now, artificial intelligence is making it worse. AI-driven logistics systems are optimizing global trade routes in real time, rerouting ships away from conflict zones automatically, which in theory sounds good, until you realize that the same automation is desensitizing the global leaders to the local crisis. And when your supply chain automatically reroutes, you stop caring about why it needed to reroute in the first place. And the suffering becomes invisible. So, where does this all lead? Let me give you 3 predictions. First, the Arctic. Climate change is opening new Arctic routes. The Northern Sea route is becoming increasingly navigable, and this is shifting the entire balance of maritime power. Nations that previously had no strategic maritime presence are suddenly sitting on the most valuable shipping lanes of the next century, like Russia, Canada, Norway. New power, new politics, new compromises. Second, the ethics gap will grow wider. As supply chains become more complex, more automated, and more AI driven, the distance between the moral decision and the economic consequences will increase. It will become even easier to ignore the human suffering when the algorithm has already rerouted the ship. And third, the consumer, that is you. Here is the uncomfortable truth I want to leave you with. Every purchase you make is a vote for this system. Every product you buy without asking where it came from, every delivery you track without wondering what human cost made it possible, is a silent endorsement on the compromises that keep those ships moving. The moral equation of the global trade does not begin in the halls of government. It begins in your shopping cart. I have sailed through Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Malacca, and I have passed through Suez Canal more times than I can count. And every single time I knew that the cargo in my ship's hold, ship's tanks, was more than just goods. It was the leverage, the power, it was the politics, moving silently through the night on the water that nobody owns, but everybody desperately needs. The sea does not care about ethics. The sea does not care about human rights. The sea does not care about the politics. The sea only asks, can you navigate? And the harder question is the question that the world is struggling to answer. It is whether we can navigate not just water, but the moral cost of keeping it open. If this video made you think, share it. Because the conversation that the world needs to have about trade, about ethics, geography and about power, that conversation starts here. Subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon, and I will see you in the next one.